right.
Cool.
Well, my name is Aaron Rhodes, and you're listening to the Shuttlecock podcast. We're sponsored by the Vinyl Underground at Seventh Heaven, offering new and used vinyl at 76 and Troost in Kansas City, Missouri. This week on the show, we have Namesake. How's it going?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I think it's usually the case, but overdue, I think, with a lot of the guests I have. But no, I've been looking.
Oh yeah, I mean, the time is, what did they say? The present is the best time or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
No time better than the present. Something like that.
Yes.
Something like that.
That's why it's a gift. That's why they call it the present. No, okay.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that one. It's a gift. That's why they call it the present. Yeah, I'm gonna steal that.
No, I definitely didn't make that up. So you can run with that if you want. But yeah, what have you been up to in pandemic times?
Pandemic times, just trying to like stay afloat, you know. Just working on music, but also just like figuring out other ways to make money financially, obviously, outside of like music stuff. Because for a while it was like nothing was really happening, for like show wise or like gig wise or even like artists or labels or anything. Like there was just a lot of stuff just kind of got halted for a little bit. It's picking up a little bit now, but just fitting. And I moved in the middle of the pandemic, so that's like a whole thing. But yeah, so just trying to find ways to stay creative. And because if no one knows what it's gonna look like, if Corona is ever over, if what the world's gonna look like afterwards.
Yeah.
But when we get back to normal, just to be able to move forward like full force. So take advantage of the time that we have, because it's like you don't really have to be promoting anything or like there's a lot of artists, a lot of like musicians and stuff aren't really going full force because they can't, or they feel like the support behind it won't be as like as big right now for obvious reasons. So just kind of like taking the time while things are in a lull to like just work on the craft, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's funny. Like maybe I brought this up on another episode or just elsewhere, but it was kind of funny. Like for like a year or two I've just felt like I had such a big backlog of stuff that I wanted to do, and I'm like, I literally like had the thought, I'm like, I just want to pause the world and just catch up on my shit. And now that the world has been paused for 6 months, I'm like, that's maybe not. Never, be careful what you wish for, I guess.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's just such a weird time when, it seems like the world's just been on pause. And what do you do with that time? We've been on quarantine or lockdown for like 6 months or whatever. So it's like, okay, you think about what you thought it was going to be in March. Now it's September, and you're like, you just look back on it. It's like what the things you thought you might do, or how long you thought it was going to last, or what you wanted summer 2020 to look like, even after you found out we were, in a pandemic. So it's like everything's just so interesting right now, I guess.
No, yeah, and I think like there was like a kind of novelty to it back in like March and April. Like everyone's like, oh, we're gonna get a month off of work, and we can bounce back from this, and it'll just be like a funny thing we all talk about in 10 years and tell our kids about. But it is obviously extended beyond that, and rightfully so. Some people are kind of losing it and having a rough time with it. So hopefully it hasn't been all that dreary on your end. Hopefully you've been able to keep a good attitude.
Yeah, I mean, there's been positive things that have been going on too. You take the good with the bad, but that's with anything.
Yeah. But yeah,
sure.
I guess we can kind of rewind a bit and work our way back. But I was just curious, as I am with most musicians, about what music was like for you growing up, and like what kind of the first type of music you like kind of latched onto, like if your family was showing you stuff, if your friends were getting you into stuff when you were a kid.
Yeah. So my musical journey as a kid, that's interesting. I wasn't really super into music growing up, I would say. I mean, I remember I think like the first CD I ever got was like Usher Confessions, and
Nice.
I was pretty young at the time, and but other than that, I really just listened to like the radio, and whoever was on the radio was kind of like what I listened to, and then like a ton of gospel music all the time. So that's pretty much it. It's
Mhm.
pretty much all I ever listened to until I got to high school. I started making beats when I was in middle school, but it wasn't until I got to high school and Kendrick Lamar had dropped Good Kid, Mad City. And I remember hearing that album and I was like, how have I never heard of Kendrick Lamar before? I felt so out the loop and listened to that and loved it. And then I think that was 2013. So every album, or that was 2012, every album that came out after that, that whole year. So you had like Jay-Z dropped, Kanye dropped, like Wale dropped that year, J. Cole dropped. All of that was like spring, summer 2013. I listened to all those projects like top to bottom. That was the first time I really like was like on the pulse of like let me actually listen to what's happening like in the industry or in rap or whatever. And that's kind of like when I started to like go digging and find like the artists and the music that I was interested in. Even though I'd already made beats prior to that for like a few years, just like for fun. So that's kind of like my musical journey. Like I had friends who would try to put me on to like Tyler the Creator when he was first coming up, and I thought he was like super weird. Didn't get into it. I really like Tyler now, but at the time I didn't get it. I was like, no, it's just weird, you know. And so it wasn't until I heard the Kendrick project, I heard Good Kid, Mad City. I'm like, oh, this is a really good artist. I really like this project. Let me be more aware of like, you know, what's going on in music before like someone tells me what to like, I guess. So that's kind of like my story.
Yeah. No, and I think it's like, and you could have been like, you could have been able to say this like 5 years ago or whatever, but like, I think, like, yeah, Good Kid, Mad City is definitely like one of like two or three like ultra influential albums in our kind of generation of like hip hop musicians. I think just because like that was like a big stepping stone for like tons and tons of people to kind of like start digging into like modern hip hop, I guess, because like
Facts.
Tyler definitely like for I think Tyler was like an easier access point for anyone who is like into like punk or like different kind of like rock subcultures and stuff, just because it had that like aggressiveness to it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think on the other end, like Good Kid, Mad City is definitely like a big like touchstone for a lot of people our age, I think.
I think so too. It's just like kind of, I think for people our age, that was like, besides like you have like Kanye, who's been around for a while. I think Kendrick was like the first artist of our generation to drop a project of that caliber, where it was kind of like, hey, you should probably listen to this and know who this guy is. And so, yeah, for a lot of us, that was kind of like, even if you had been like even a part of like the blog era, you know, before that, which I wasn't, which is like crazy, me going back to that and like, wow, I missed all this stuff, you
Yeah.
know, I had no idea. But yeah, I think Kendrick was like, once that happened, everybody, you just kind of like forced to pay attention.
Yeah,
So,
and he was like young enough and like new enough on the scene to where like young kids getting into Kendrick really felt like he was like he's our guy, you know, like because yeah, like you said, Kanye was kind of present for the previous generation, even though he's a little more like behind the scenes or a little more like on relatively unknown. But yeah, Kendrick,
right.
yeah, it's kind of he had the youth and the freshness to really bring more younger people into hip hop as a whole, I guess.
Right. And I mean, I definitely grew up with Kanye. Like when I got like an iPod, when those things were really cool, I had definitely had graduation on my iPod. I remember I used to play it all the time. I thought Stronger was the craziest song ever made and Flashing Lights. And then I discovered Daft Punk and I thought they were like the coolest band to ever exist or like duo or whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
So I had like some influences early, but they weren't as deep as they are now, or they didn't really like shape me as a musician. They were just kind of like what I was interested in hearing, I guess, you know.
Yeah, no, and it's funny, like you say like you loaded you had graduation on your iPod and it's like there are like like a certain handful of albums that like I remember like when I was a kid, I would like get on my dad's computer and get on iTunes, and like, you know, I was getting like $10 allowance every week. I'm not like buying tons of music, but like I would just like get on iTunes on his computer and just listen to like the 30-second previews of like a dozen
Yeah,
different albums all the time, and like some like Stronger, I'm sure, definitely, just because that was kind of a big crossover thing. Like I'm sure I was listening to like the 30-second preview of that and a handful of other Kanye songs. But yeah.
right. And speaking of that, like, so I had an iPod, right? And everything was like $1 to buy the song. Well, I had lost my iPod when I was like in middle school or something. So my parents weren't going to buy me another iPod because they were expensive. So I had this thing called like or the MP3 players. They were like the knockoff iPods or whatever. But the kind that I had was basically what music streaming is now, or very similar.
Mm.
Like you would load songs, you would pay, I think monthly, and you would just load songs onto your MP3 player, but they could only play on your MP3 player. They weren't like real files. I don't really understand how it works. I would have to like go back and look at it.
Mm.
But so basically, I could put like as many songs as my MP3 player would fit.
Yeah.
And I remember that's how I learned about more artists at the time. But that was still pretty early. So that I could have like the entire. I was listening to a lot of Lupe at the time, like when The Cool came out, and when like Food and Liquor came out. I remember having like the entire album on like my MP3 player. I used to listen to it top to bottom because I definitely didn't pay the $12 or $15 that it was worth on iTunes. So I can actually see like my old iTunes songs is pretty crazy from like 2007 or something.
I would be very interested in seeing like what that specific like off-brand MP3 player was and what kind of like service you were using, like
The
if you
service
can
is called
manage.
Rhapsody.
Oh, you're using
Yeah, the
Rhapsody.
service, and I think the MP3 player was like a SanDisk.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, I've seen some of those. Those are
yeah, yeah.
like, was it kind of like an oval, or like kind of a weird like long shape, but you held
Yeah,
it
it looked like kind
sideways?
of like a TV remote, but it was like much, much shorter.
Huh.
Yeah, it was. They had different designs though. They had like plenty because they were trying to get people to buy them. They
Mm,
had all kinds of different ones, but yeah, it was basically like a really small. It didn't look like an iPod at all. It was like a totally different thing.
nice. No,
But
I
yeah,
think oh, sorry.
no, you're right.
No, I think I moved from, I initially had the iPod Shuffle, which is like the one with no screen, and
Right.
then I got the iPod Touch, but then by the time I was in like high school, I like went full like music nerd and got like off Craigslist like the iPod Classic with like 120 gigabytes in it, so I could just load every single
Nice.
album that I owned all at once into it. And I was always like
Nice. Yeah.
showing that to my friends. That was what I was doing in high school. Um,
I always wanted a classic just for the novelty of it. I knew I
oh
would never have that many songs, but
no, yeah.
I
The
thought it
thing
was just
is,
cool.
it's like I still have it. I'm sure it still works. I haven't touched it in
Yeah.
years, but like it would just be such a task to like actually go download all of the stuff and like load it onto there on a regular basis. Because like there's plenty of music that
Right.
I love that isn't on streaming services, but like just the task of like loading it all onto my iPod every week would be kind of a thing.
I have a Forbidden Aaliyah collection, and if I had an iPod Classic, I would put all of it on the on my iPod Classic. But yeah,
Before this gets like way too boring to anyone listening, like I is there a way you can like on Spotify like upload your own like parts of your own
no,
library and then listen over like internet? No,
there's no way. So on Apple Music, you can do it with iCloud
that's right.
Library, super easy.
Yeah.
Google Play Music, you can do it. The best way you could do it on Spotify that's really creative is that I've seen people make podcasts
Oh yeah.
from like leaked songs and stuff like that. And I guess since the podcast section of Spotify isn't super moderated, it kind of like gets by. So you could do that if you wanted to and put your whatever album isn't on streaming on like a podcast and then
Yeah.
just play your podcast.
Uh,
So there's whoever's listening that, it
yeah.
is what it is. I didn't invent it. So
next up on the Shuttlecock tech support podcast, we have no, but
Right. I get super nerdy with the tech stuff,
oh
so we
yeah.
could talk. We could do this all day. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned you were making beats like before you were even like super interested in like keeping up with like current hip hop stuff.
Yeah.
You said, but like, so what was some of the initial like inspiration and drive that kind of went into your like first stuff you're making?
So basically my journey in the beats was I always kind of liked production, and I think my dad saw that somehow. I don't even know. And basically sometimes there would be this lady at my church who would have like these very, very like old school like CDJ type things. But not like the ones you see at like festivals. They're like very different. And I would like get on there and like mix songs like from track to track or whatever, or try it. And my dad used to DJ when he was in college, so he had turntables like in our basement that he never uses. So I like tried them like once or twice or whatever. But basically, if you remember the artist XV from Wichita, um, his cousin was one of his main producers, and me and him kind of grew up together and went to the same church, lived around the corner from me. And so he taught me FL when I was in middle school, and that's basically how I learned to make beats. And I just kind of did it for fun. I was listening to Shock Value by Timbaland at the time, and like Future Sex Love Sounds, so that was kind of like my early inspiration. But I mean, none of my beats really sounded like anything. Like nowadays, like people get into production, it's very, very different. Like it's much easier. Like the sound better. The drum kits sound way better. It's incredible, actually. The VST sound better. Like you can get into it and make a hit like on your first day, like trying it. Like if you really wanted to do that. Back then, like using FL demo, like you hear what Crank That sounds like that beat, like he
Sounds
made
great.
that into a hit song, but that was really the capabilities of what you really had at the time if
Yeah.
you were like starting out as a producer. So that my beats didn't really sound like anything. And it was like probably a couple years before I even decided, oh, I should make beats that artists want to use to like rap on. It was just kind of like people go play video games. Like I would just hop on FL Studio and like click around and make some. I have all the beats I've ever made, or like 90% of
Mhm.
them. So I'll go back and listen to them sometimes. It's really funny.
How old were you during those like your first time like doing FL?
Uh, 13, 14, something like that.
And were
Probably.
were you living in Wichita or you just had family there or?
Oh, no, no, no. I lived in Kansas City, and
Mm.
his cousin lived in KC as well. But I learned about XD through him because he used to produce for his cousin, who is
Mm.
XD. And so, yeah, that's basically how I got started.
Oh, sorry.
You still see me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, cool.
Um, no, what else? Uh, no, yeah. So you mentioned that like there was some other you said the some of the gear you were using some of the like CDJ type gear from the church early on.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, yeah,
yeah, that
and
was and I used to try to like run like live sound and stuff like that,
mm,
like basically just muting and unmuting mics, like nothing crazy. But I
yeah,
was like super young. I was a teenager, not even a teenager really. It was just always interesting to me. And when I got into middle school, I was playing like saxophone and stuff. So I always did things around music, but like nobody in my family is musical, like at all. Like nobody in my family sings, nobody plays instruments, nobody. I have a cousin that dances, like, but like he's like 8 hours away in Texas. So like, like it was. I didn't really grow up around music besides like going to church every week and like gospel music and stuff like that. So um, I guess, just me being interested in like those very specific things, like the CDJ here, doing a live sound, because that's what was interesting me trying out band when I was in middle school. I think I just kind of found my way into production in like a roundabout way.
yeah. It
And then
was
also having a friend who actually knew how to make beats in FL, you know.
no, yeah. It sounds like it was a very like gradual thing rather than just like one like crazy moment that like kind of sucked you in. So it is kind of interesting to see it kind of move in from several different like aspects of your life and hobbies and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess well it maybe has nothing to do with it at all, but some of your like earlier music experiences were like in the church. Do you think like they kind of like, because a lot of your beats are very like upbeat, like do you think that kind of upbeatness from the gospel music kind of like translates into the kind of beats you make at all?
I don't think so at all. I think for the amount of like church that I've had in my lifetime, I feel like I have not a lick of gospel influence because I was never a church musician. So I never played drums in church. I never played keys. I never
From
was in
playing the
choir or anything
saxophone
like
at
that.
church, you weren't?
I played the saxophone in church one time
Oh,
and I hated it. And that was the last time I ever did that. So when it comes to my beats, I really just, especially early on, I was just trying to make something that sounded good or sounded cool. I remember specifically trying to remake the beat, the Kobe Bryant beat, which is super relevant right now. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. But Kobe Bryant that Lil Wayne did, that he actually just redid. He re-put that out on a No Ceilings mixtape that he remastered or whatever. But I remember trying to make that beat in FL at the time, and I didn't even have a there's like a horn sample or like playing the horn synth or whatever, and I didn't have a sound that sounded like that in FL. And I was like, I don't know how to do this, and the beat that I made sounded nothing like it. It was so trash. So I was like, that was the first time I really tried to get better with beats or whatever. But I was just trying to make things that I heard like on the radio or on like SoundClick, which was like a beat selling website before like type beats were a thing.
mm.
Yeah, so it was just, and then after that, just finding out what VSTs are, and then just finding out what chords are, just natural music producer progression type stuff. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say the church influence was like super
Mm.
heavy in my sound or anything like that.
No, and you said that like an early album that you also were pretty into was Timbaland's Shock Value.
Yeah.
And I read in, I think you got interviewed by like St. Louis Public Radio, and
Oh,
you
I
were,
did. Yeah.
yeah, and you were talking about how like the Missy and Timbaland stuff is like you're pretty into a lot of their stuff together. Like, did you kind of work your way back and find the Missy stuff,
Yeah.
or yeah?
I worked my way back for the Missy stuff. So basically, after I kind of got into college and like post college, just figuring out, especially specifically with PinkCaravan, like she's a super huge Missy Elliott fan. So just taking kind of like what I already knew about Missy Elliott and Tim, and then also like Neptunes and stuff. Just kind of going back and re-listening and kind of like with the knowledge I've gained now, kind of understanding what their process was, what they were trying to do, what they were trying to accomplish. Um, but as far as like the Shock Value album, I was just really into all the like synth stuff that producers were doing in hip hop around 2007, 2008. Like his album, Future Sex Love Sounds, Graduation, because it's like synths and samples on there. Diddy's album, Press Play, super underrated. I think that has the best production, like the most futuristic production, like in the 2000s, like period, for a rap record. And that was like 2007, 2008.
What
Um,
singles were there any big singles off that? I'm trying to think.
he had a song called "Tell Me" with one of the Pussycat Dolls, I think.
Okay, nice.
Um,
I'm
but
sure
they
it's
weren't.
great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of the songs on that album were like super big or anything like that, like any like radio records or anything.
Mm.
But I mean, it was a very feature filled, like Twist on it. Timbaland produced a bunch of it. Danger's on it. Um, I think I can't remember. There's some more like there's some couple of like pretty big names that are on it though.
Mm.
And I think it's just a good album, like production wise. But yeah, I was just really into like all these like they're basically pulling all these electronic influences like the synthesizers and stuff. I'm like, wow, everything sounds so cool. And I think that's just because of how old I was at the time. It's like the perfect age for anything to sound cool, and that's what was, I guess, around for me to listen to and to gravitate towards. So I kind of like really got into that, and that's kind of what was driving like my earlier sounding beats, which is kind of like that very like heavy synth. Like if you listen to the beat for the on shock value. What's the way I are?
Mhm.
Like that beat is crazy. It's just like with the synths and like the 4 and 4 beat or whatever. And I thought the difference between Tim's song with One Republic and like the original version, like just to hear like what he did different to it, which is really just some drums and like some other stuff. But how the bounce was different, how it felt different, and that version was on the radio. Just like very little things like that, just were the kind of early influences for me, I think.
No, yeah, and it's funny, like you mentioned, like you were really drawn into like the synth stuff and all this kind of electronic influenced like pop and rap music,
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny, like you're like when you're like maybe like a teenager or younger and you're hearing all of that type of music from like the late aughts, like early tens, it's
Mm-hmm.
like you probably don't like I definitely didn't, but like you don't have as much like background knowledge of like kind of like 70s and 80s music that also kind of pulled from that stuff, so you're like you don't know anything about that, so you're like, wow, this sounds like the future, this is crazy, this like
Oh yeah, I
robots, you
didn't
got
have
Daft
any.
Punk. So
Yeah.
like I'm sure anyone who was like an adult in the 70s and 80s is like, oh, they're just doing this again, but like
Right.
any kid must have been like, oh, holy shit, this is crazy. So it makes sense that you gravitated towards like Daft Punk and then kind of found all of this stuff to be on
Right.
your wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah, I went super hard into like EDM when I was in high school. Like I was listening to like Madian a lot, if you know who that is. And what's interesting about him, he's like a French house producer,
Mm.
but we're like the same age. He the FL Studio used to have these remix contests they used to do in like the late 2000s or like maybe like the early tens maybe. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna kill this or whatever, because everybody who used FL at the time, it was all like dance beats, just like really trash techno stuff or
Mm.
whatever. Not that techno is trash, but the type of beats they were making were very trash. And so I was just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna kill it. So it was like whatever the acapella was, I don't remember. Definitely wasn't hip hop inspired, but I was just gonna make a hip hop beat to it. And I did. I thought it was cool. I got like some little votes in like their form or whatever. But then I heard the winner, and it was this guy named Madian, and he won, and it was actually like pretty cool. I don't really remember it that well, but I basically followed his career ever since then. And he used to do these like super cool like mashup videos on YouTube, like they were really popular. And he ended up being like a full out producer and DJ in his own right, and he makes incredible stuff. But yeah, I got super hard into dance music from that. So listening to a lot of like French house stuff or like electro house, like Wolfgang Gardner, or yeah, Gardner. I think I'm saying that right. Him, and then when dubstep became a thing, that freaked. I mean, everybody was probably listening to dubstep at one point in time. So
Mm.
like when Skrillex came around, that was crazy. Flex Pavilion, all kinds of like crazy stuff. That's what I was listening to like senior year of high school before Kendrick dropped. Like
Mm.
that's kind of like I wouldn't say it wasn't my influence. It was just I thought it was so interesting. It was just like I wasn't. It wasn't anything that I had really heard before or was familiar with.
Yep.
But as far as like influences and stuff, my dad plays like a lot of like 80s hip hop records. So like Run DMC, Eric B and Rakim, but also like party music like um what is the like Zapp and Roger and like Cameo and stuff like that. And then like
Mm.
in some of those records you'll hear maybe like a synthesizer or two or like the vocoder type vocals and stuff like that.
Mm.
But I definitely didn't put it together in the way you kind of are like, oh hey, maybe this stuff that Timbaland's doing with the synths is grabbing from this old stuff over here. Because I didn't listen to disco at all growing up. I had no idea what disco was. So, you know, but yeah, that was kind of going on, right?
No, no, that's good. No, and that kind of made me think too. It's like, well, it's funny because I don't know if you've talked to Alexander Preston before, but he
Yeah, we're
also,
cool.
yeah, he has like he did kind of have like a big EDM, like dance music, techno, electronic phase, like before he got really into like he was making like, yeah, kind of like instrumental tracks and songs like that
Right.
too. So, and
And you
it's
can
funny,
hear it
like,
with his stuff.
yeah,
You can really hear it. Like he leans into that a lot. Sounds good.
no, yeah, and he Well, no, the thing is, it's like, it's funny, like pop music, like how people talk about pop music, I think kind of like morphs over time and kind of like latches itself onto whatever like other genre of music is like really gaining steam. So like, of course, like the last 10-15 years that has been hip hop, but like even concurrently and before that, like all the like a lot of like very big pop songs, if you like pick them apart, like Britney Spears like type shit, like Justin Bieber songs,
Hmm.
like more recent Justin Bieber stuff, but like in addition to or aside from having hip hop influence, like they do have a lot of like I think kind of like electronic and techno influence that people don't really think
Oh, for
about
sure.
if you don't look for it. So like
Because
having
I
so
remember,
no yeah, having that background, that
yeah.
you're interested in that, and Alexander also I think probably helps you guys as like producers and songwriters.
Oh, you
That was
have
my
to.
thought.
I think electronic producers, EDM producers, they're the best producers. They're the most talented, the most skilled. Everything I know besides drum production, I guess, but like all the like synth work, like even the stuff I do like with PinkCaravan, like I had to, there was no preset VST that I could have find those sounds with. I had to go make those from scratch. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't like was already in the EDM and I knew what sound design was. And like Future Bass was kind of new. So I was like learning sound design for that or whatever. So I think like the electronic producers and also you see it with guys who because like loops are pretty big now in the producer world and you have like Q Beats and you have all these guys from like Germany or whatever and all they do is like sit with their synths and make like cool loops for like hip hop producers to use because hip hop's huge right now. Um, you know, those guys definitely are the most, I guess, technically skilled like producers or whatever. So you can learn a lot just listening to EDM and just learning about different like sonic textures and stuff like that. And I think like even like when EDM had that really big crossover like in the early tens, yeah, like pop was kind of like getting more EDM, like stuff what Rihanna was doing. And like even Beyonce was working with like Diplo and Rihanna with Calvin Harris. And then you had Zed who had like a huge pop hit, even though he was like a DJ or whatever.
Yeah, and then yeah, chain
Um,
smokers, all that shit.
yeah, even Chainsmokers after that. Like I think those guys really kind of brought some of the EDM stuff you would only hear like, you know, big festivals or whatever.
Mm.
Kind of brought it to like the pop world and now like everybody's there's like some elements of it like in pop music specifically, I would
Yeah.
say for sure.
No, yeah. And sorry. No, yeah. So you've also yeah, you mentioned a couple times you work a lot with a St. Louis artist named PinkCaravan,
Yeah.
and she's very talented. I think like this might be the one time, but maybe there's been more. That might have been the one time we've been in the same room was when she came to play the Westport Coffee House.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. I
It
was
was a
going to
fun show.
mention that earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
but
remember yeah, you were there for that.
oh yeah, and how did you first kind of get in touch with her and start working together?
Um, so I'm gonna try to give the short version because I'm super long-winded. So basically, what happened was, um, I was in college and I had friends who lived in St. Louis that also made music. So we had mutual friends, and she was looking for a beat. She was looking for somebody to produce, I guess, a project. I don't even know what she was looking for at the time. But basically, one of my mutual friends with her recommended me and she like found my Twitter, I think, and my B page and a beat on there called Mario Party and which is kind of fitting if you think about it. And she loved it and she's like, hey, do you have any more beats like this? And I was like, no, but I'll just make you one. And so I made the beat that day for Raba Jewelry Store, which is on the first EP that we did together. Sent that to her. She loved it. And then we did those three songs like in the next month and we put it out the month after that. And that's how we started working together. And ever since then, we've been pretty much working together. That was like 2017, I think.
Oh, yeah, and there is like a lot of references to like earlier St. Louis hip hop on that project and several of her songs. Is that something that you have like any like real personal connection to, like the kind of mid to late aughts like St. Louis stuff?
That's definitely her thing. Definitely like 100% her thing. Which I think makes the music like super cool. Like she's very nostalgic. She's big on like her influences and what influenced her like as a child, you know.
Mm.
So and like how things felt when she was like growing up and just kind of capturing the emotions from all of that. So basically all the influences, the decision to like sample grills and even to interpolate Huey's Pop Pop and Drop It, rest in peace Huey, for another song, you know, those are all like her ideas and just kind of like her being St. Louis to the core, essentially.
Mm. And
But I mean, everybody in Missouri, you know, wanted to have the Band-Aid on their face from Nelly. Like growing up, that was just a given, you know.
yeah, shout out to Solomon. I've seen him rock a Band-Aid before. It's a good
Right.
look.
Yeah. Shout out
um,
Solomon, man.
no, yeah. So what do you think makes your like you and PinkCaravan's dynamic work so well? Like just because yeah, you've done like 2 full projects together basically, and I'm guessing there's more coming. So what do you
Right.
think makes it work?
I think it's just under like me just having an understanding of her style and her personality and kind of the vibe that she wants, specifically like the vibes and the aesthetics that influence her creativity.
Mm.
I think in short, that's what makes it work. Because I've even like myself, so like I produce most of her stuff, but I actually try like actively to like get other producers like on board. And we have a couple songs out that are like co-produced with me and like somebody else and stuff like that. But what I noticed is that even if people like use, you know, like similar soundscapes and stuff, it's like there's definitely like a certain, I don't know how to put it. It's like a certain vibe, you know, that an instrumental has to have for her to even consider writing to it. You know, this sounds kind of pretentious, but it's more so just like knowing what inspires her and her creativity as an artist, you know.
No, that makes sense.
And I think I listened to her early on, knowing that she liked the beat that I had at the time that's called Mario Party. And then me us doing that first EP, like I kind of immediately knew, like, oh, okay, these are the type of things that she likes and she influences. And I've made her like, you know, we've only put out like a handful of songs, but I've made her probably like hundreds of beats. And so like I have actual like evidence of just like, yeah, this is what's going to work and this is what's not going to work, you know. Even if I
Mm.
want to like branch out and try something different, it still has to invoke a certain emotion, you know.
Mm. No,
Yeah.
and I know were you going to school at Mizzou in Columbia for a while? Are you still there?
Yeah, I went to Mizzou.
Mm. So I was kind of curious, like what the Columbia scene or lack thereof is like, and like
Uh
if you kind of led to you feeling like disconnected to KC or St. Louis at all.
all right. That's a good question actually, because if I didn't go to Mizzou, I would have never met PinkCaravan.
Mm.
Like, period. But also because like Mizzou brought me closer to St. Louis, but it took me farther away from KC. Like I was the only black male from my school that went to Mizzou. Like all my other friends went to like Mo State, Northwest, or whatever. And there were only really a handful of black students who went to Mizzou. They were from Kansas City. You know, there was more people from St. Louis who went, and there were a ton of people from Chicago that went. So that
Mm.
was kind of what influenced the culture of like black people at Mizzou at the time. But as far as musically, I mean, I think now or like in the last few years, it's been like a growing scene there. There's a lot of like good bands there. Um, there's a lot of pretty good venues there. They'll bring in like decent artists and bands. There's a couple of festivals there now. Earlier when I got there, it was mostly just kind of like the DJs would bring like maybe like somebody in from like homecoming or something like that. It was like a really big like going out, like partying and stuff like that. But I think more so like in my last few years there, and then like after I wasn't going there anymore, it was more so kind of like a more indie scene, I guess. There's like a venue there called Cafe Berlin, and they bring in a lot of like smaller acts. Like me and PinkCaravan performed there plenty of times. The film festival, they'll bring in like local and kind of like mid-sized acts to come to the city
Yeah,
and
true
perform.
false.
Yeah, true false. So it's not like KU, because KU they have what's that venue there? The Granada, something like that. Like they actually bring in like TDE goes there like every year on their circuit.
Yep.
So like we like nobody from TDE stops through the Blue Note in Columbia, but like we've had like a few like artists on the rise. Like I know Chance performed at Mizzou, Kendrick performed at Mizzou, but that was before I was there. Saba came, Mick came, Tory Lanez came, Jacquees, but then like a whole bunch of other like non-rap stuff too, like a whole bunch of like uh indie bands and like who else? I'm drawing a blank. There were like so many other just like oh the internet came. I forgot about the internet. Like they came all through Columbia, but that's kind of like the vibe of, or at least that I guess maybe the promoters were bringing. Like I wasn't involved in any of that stuff. But it's definitely more of a kind of like a chiller indie band type of, or indie artist type of vibe in Columbia. But there's a few artists that are still there. That still live there. They're doing some dope things. So yeah.
Was it frustrating for you to not have like the national tours coming through that you would have been able to possibly like kind of interact with at KU or something like that?
I just thought it was interesting. I was just like, why are people stopping to go to the Granada? Like, like why Lawrence, Kansas, and not Columbia, Missouri? That was just kind of the interesting thing to me. Like maybe Lawrence is closer to KC, so you can kind of pull both, get the college crowd and people who will drive 45 minutes over or whatever. But when I was in school, I just thought that was like it was interesting to know, like, oh, okay, the mainstream guys are going to KU, and then we'll get like some of the indie year stuff or whatever. But it was cool though. Yeah.
Yeah, and you produced 2 or 3 songs on a new project from a rapper named Jay Wood.
Yeah.
He's from South Florida, I think.
No, he's from Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. I must have misread something. But yeah, how did you first get in touch with him? And I'll do a follow up after that.
Yeah. So he went to Mizzou. We went to Mizzou at the same time.
No,
So he's like a few classes below me or whatever. And I saw him rap once at like this on campus thing. And ever since then, we've been kind of like, cool. That's like the homie. That's like whatever. Like, so we just always been like super cool with kicking and stuff like that. And I would just like help him like whatever he needed help with, like outside of music or whatever. And then he just graduated from Mizzou this past spring. So he wanted to, get a project together to just kind of commemorate his whole like collegiate experience and him transitioning to being like an artist. So basically, I just helped him put that together. Produced on there, mixed a couple songs. I recorded most of it. So yeah, it's just like the homie, and we just really wanted to put some really great music together because I believe that we could. So that's kind of like how that project came about.
No, yeah, and I listened to a couple of the tracks you produced on that project,
Mm-hmm.
and they are like kind of like darker, more like nocturnal type songs than I think you're kind of known for.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it important to you to like try something different, or were you kind of just following his lead on that? And was it fun just to be able to do something a little different?
Yeah. Well, yeah, really. How do I answer this question? So we do have a song together called Come Scoop that's kind of like more in like the kind of like sound I guess I'm known for. But before I was working with PinkCaravan and like I was putting stuff on SoundCloud, I definitely made more conventional style beats, most of the time. And I had met a friend when I was in college. So just kind of like, hey, you're showing me all these cool like, you know, beats and producers on SoundCloud. Like you're talented enough. Why don't you just make something more creative like that? And I'm just like, oh, okay, you're right. Yeah, like I'll try it. And so we worked on a whole bunch of stuff, and that kind of led into me having the chops to even attempt to make something that PinkCaravan would want to rap over. So with Jay Wood, he's more of a, I guess he has more of a kind of like a conventional style, Like I definitely could have been more like eccentric with some of the stuff because at the end of the day, like Chicago, it's a soulful city, but they're not. Um, the producers there are not shy to do something that's a little bit like outside of the box. But I know specifically that I kind of wanted to just make something that was just really like killer, I guess, and for lack of a better word. And so I was just making beats. I think I made both those beats the same day. Like I think this was January or February. I think it was like January this year. And I was just like, I made them. I didn't even intend for him to like use those. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm making beats. He hears all the beats I make, like they're in like a Dropbox folder or whatever. And he was just like, oh, like he was like, keep these. I'm gonna work on that. I was like, go crazy. And then he basically wrote those songs like super quick. And when he did those, they were definitely different from kind of like the vibes he had done before. And I was like, oh, I can see where this is going. And from there, we just kind of like worked on the records, got them to where they need to be. But yeah, that's like it's just a bro. And so for the sound, I definitely at this point I don't know like how much of the sound I'm known for will still get produced, outside of like PinkCaravan records and maybe like Sam Stan records and stuff like that. Because I think I'm just finding uh more like more sounds, like I don't know another word, but just like finding more ways to work with different kinds of artists and different kinds of styles and stuff like that. So
Oh yeah, because you did just you mentioned Sam Stan and uh, his latest project, Happy Raps 2.
yeah,
I think.
Happy Raps 2. Yeah,
No,
the
yeah.
sequel.
So you can tell from the title what that's gonna kind of sound like a little bit, but those are all
Right.
the tracks I heard from that were very solid also. So definitely
Appreciate it.
a project worth checking out for anyone listening.
Happy Raps 2. And we had put that one took like some time because Sam's like he's a super intentional artist. Like he kind of knows everything about him is about the vibes. Like maybe he's the one that's from South Florida, so
Okay, yeah.
maybe it's just
So
a South Florida thing. Like I don't know, but he's like super vibey, super, he catch a wave, like So we had done like a lot of those records just kind of like over time, and then we just kind of like picked our favorite ones and for the album. But when I started working with Pink, I wanted to work with him because I was like, oh, I think the same type of mindset I put towards PinkCaravan, I could put towards his sound. And so we kind of started working in 2017, and I produced a couple of songs for him over time. And then we did the whole album together that came out this year. So
nice. No, yeah, and they were both featured on like a song that you put out yourself.
yeah,
Is that Vroom Vroom?
yeah, Vroom Vroom, yeah.
No, that's a fun one. And did they have any knowledge of each other before you put them on that song, or like?
No, not at all. That was completely me. So basically, we had done the me and PinkCaravan. We did the A Very Sad Happy Birthday EP, 3 songs, right? And so we're working at a studio or somebody's house, I think, in St. Louis. And so I make the Room Room beat. And if you listen to that beat and you listen to the EP, they're similar in aesthetic, but they're different in like groove and balance and stuff like that. And it's kind of more so kind of like what I wanted to do as a producer. And PinkCaravan, she was she didn't really like know like, okay, like this is different, like, I'm over here, but you're doing this or whatever. I'm like, this is gonna be so sick. Like you should just, you know, find whatever works on it. And the song is called Vroom Vroom. hilariously because she had just changed her name to PinkCaravan. So we were just kind of like messing around like with a play on words. I was like, just go and record something. Like, just give me like 30 seconds and just see what comes out. So she was just like, I don't skirt. It's like vroom vroom. And we kind of got that line from Missy Elliott, from the Rain, where she's like, beep beep, who got the keys to the Jeep? Vroom or whatever. So like we were just, it's like a whole bunch of play on words from Missy to her being PinkCaravan, Caravan being in the car, her going vroom vroom or whatever. So we were just kind of like joking around. But I was like, oh no, this is cool. And so I took like literally uh there's a sample of PinkCaravan that shows up in Sam's verse on that song. That was what I sent Sam. It was like literally just 3 seconds. And I was like, hey, I have this idea. I took this out of her freestyle. I think this could be a really cool song. I need you to write a verse to it. And he came and he killed it. And he wrote his verse with like half of a hook. And he put it in the world. He put it in there like right. And then I brought it back to PinkCaravan. I was like, hey, I need you to finish the song. Like we need a proper hook. And I need you to do like a little verse. And I think this could be something special. And so we ended up finishing it out. And it just ended up being perfect timing, like with the release and everything. And ended up being a really cool song. So yeah, that's kind of like how that came about, really. It's just kind of me trying to orchestrate something, which is really super cool, I guess.
Because I definitely heard the first PinkCaravan EP when I forget the name she was going by before, but I definitely heard it at that point before
Yeah.
it got switched.
Yeah, she was going by S, and then she's going by Jasmine, but like
Oh,
no
okay, yeah,
vowels.
that's right.
Yeah, which is her real name. So, but yeah, now she goes by PinkCaravan.
And
That's super sick.
it is fun. So there are a couple other like solo tracks that you've produced that you've put on streaming, and I think maybe a couple more on SoundCloud. But I think are those all just instrumental tracks, right?
So I think on streaming, I have like a few more collabs. Like I have a collab with Bachi, who's from Florida,
Oh yeah.
that I put out earlier this year, and then I have a collab with this guy named Patches that we put out a couple years ago. That was like super super fun song. And that got like picked up. Like a lot of the songs, I guess when you're like a producer, like they get like picked up from stuff. So like I got like a couple of like TV placements and stuff from those, which is like really cool.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't really do instrumental. I think maybe one or two instrumental songs on Spotify. It's just they're very like tedious for me to make because I never feel like they're good enough to just be like a standalone. Like I get bored making them. Like like
Yeah, you want to have
when
like
you're making
a
it.
purpose behind it.
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't serve a purpose. Like not to me. Like I enjoy listening to instrumental music all the time, or like just hopping on SoundCloud and listening to like flips and edits or samples or whatever. But me personally making them, I don't have the I guess just the insight or the creativity to just kind of like make it work for myself. So I don't tend to do instrumental track all that often.
What shows did you get stuff placed on?
Vroom Vroom was on Dear White People. Is that right? Is that right?
I feel like I
Yeah.
remember you posting about that. Yeah.
Yeah, Vroom Vroom was on Dear White People. It was on the soundtrack and it was in an episode for season 2. Yeah, girlfriend's helping me out. And the song with Patrick Show Goes On was on Ball in the Family, like LeVar Ball's Facebook show.
Nice.
It played in an episode. I feel like I'm forgetting one other thing, but those are like the two big things, which was like super cool because any artists, like producers that are watching, like sync placements is a really good way to like make some money because I probably made more money doing that than I made like having the song released. So
yeah, royalties, residuals, all that good stuff. Do you know how exactly your stuff got found and placed on there?
The honest answer is no. So basically, I don't know if it's like this for everybody, but for me, they just kind of like emailed me and like, hey, we want to use this song. They already had it set for where they wanted it to go, like what episode, what scene, and maybe it would change later down the line. But like, hey, we already have this set. This is kind of like the budget we're looking for. Does this work? Yes, no. Like that was pretty much it. The person that A&R the Dear White People album I had met before, so I was like, oh, maybe she like threw it into like the music supervisor or something like that. Like I noticed that after the fact. I was like looking at the liner notes. I was like, oh, I know this person. But the Ball in the Family one was like super random, like another music supervisor. Maybe they listened to the Dear White People soundtrack and was just like listening to other stuff. Because I definitely had like people approach me in my email from like publishers and stuff like that, like, oh, you know, what other songs like are you working on, this, that, and the other. So I assume the music supervisor or music placement industry isn't very big.
Yeah.
So I think if you get on one soundtrack, like we were almost on Insecure one time, so that would have been crazy.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I think it's like if you're on one soundtrack, they'll find you and you'll get on more. So,
yeah, there's probably a group chat or a Discord or something
yeah,
there.
something.
Facebook
People are
group.
just trying to still artists, like, oh, this artist was super cool on this one. Let's add them to this one. Like all my friends that are artists or producers that have sync placements, a lot of them continue to get sync placements. It's never really just like a one-off thing. So I think it's kind of like once you're kind of in that system, the music supervisors, I think, are just kind of like always looking out. I think that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. So yeah, do you have more plans to kind of like assemble more songs to release yourself or like work on a project at any point?
Yeah, I should. So I'm gonna say yes. I've been trying to do a project for like years. It's just doing a project as a producer is like super hard, at least for me, because it's just a lot of moving pieces. When it's not an instrumental project, and you have to kind of like balance like other artists and like getting stuff together, and then you have to get everything cleared and all this other stuff. So like I had actually at one time like a 5-song project that just kind of like fell through the cracks. That was like very disappointing. So I was just like, oh, I'm never doing this again. So but right now I'm like basically just gonna repossess a whole bunch of songs that I like know exist, like from different rappers, either like songs that didn't come out or like rappers that I have worked with and like the song didn't come out, but like, hey, you know, putting together EP, can I get like a verse on this or something like that? And I want to put out a project like that. I'm not gonna say when because you know timing's weird.
Yeah.
But long story short, I would like to do a project. It will not be an instrumental project because I suck at those. And I want to basically have a lot of artists. There's gonna be artists from KC, St. Louis, and Chicago, and then like other rappers that I've kind of met through this short little journey that will basically provide me a verse. So and it won't be like anything super that kind of like flexes like my production or anything like that, like a lot like stylistically. I just want it to be like, you know, good music, you know, like good songs, like good energy, stuff like that. I'm not super concerned with like being like the Namesake sound or something, anything like that. So I just kind of like want to make good songs with like artists that I like, but also have them all on the same project. So it just kind of like, if you're a fan of one, it'll introduce you to the other, and then maybe it'll show like some range too, and like production and like artists that I work with and stuff. So yeah, that is a goal of mine, like a short-term goal. So like get that going. I mean, there's some songs that I already have, but a project, quote unquote, doesn't exist yet. So yeah.
I think the last thing I had, you kind of touched on it there, was, at least to my knowledge, you've only produced like a small handful of songs that have involved Kansas City artists. Like you have Skateland with Joey Origami, and you have Run with A'Sean, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there's any specific reason you haven't worked as much with Kansas City artists, and do you kind of hope to? You said you did kind of hope to change that over time.
Right. That's a good question. We should talk about KC more. But I don't know, man. Really, because the Joey song, he basically like hunted me down to like, I think I was like, no, I can't remember because I've worked with Joey a couple times, so I can't remember if that was one that I produced at his like with him. I think it was, but I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But he will like always wanted to work, and like Joey's like the coolest person ever, like super chill guy. Like, how can you not like him? So like when I remember when I was like first meeting him for the first time, like I always thought he was like super cool. So like why wouldn't I do a song with him? And it just he was like very what's the word? Like adamant, I guess, about like just like collabing, like not even just about like doing the song or
Hmm.
whatever. So or at least to me he was like I don't it wasn't like he was like blowing me up or anything like that. But I could tell like we had collabed like a couple times. So it made sense that we were gonna do a song. And I think that beat that I made, because even like when I heard it when it came out, I was like, oh yeah, this was like a different era of like Namesake, you know? Um, but I love the song that he made to it, like Skate Land. Like me, like I grew up in Grandview, or at least like part of my time in KC, I was in Grandview. It's like super nostalgic. Like I thought it would be like a bigger song in KC, low key, just because you have the nostalgia factor there or whatever.
Hmm.
But and then A'Sean, we got really cool like this year. Like I've always thought A'Sean was like super cool, but like I like went to his house earlier this year and we were just like talking about all kinds of stuff. Like he is definitely an artist that gives like a lot of thought, not just in his music, but just like in the world in general.
For sure.
And so we just kind of connected on just like on a friend note, or just like were we able to just like talk about anything really, like music, politics, whatever, and just learning more about him as a person just kind of made me want to like work with him more, or just understand kind of like what he wanted. I think that's what I like as a producer. I kind of have to understand where you want to go with your music and kind of like who you are as a person, because that's just how I've always worked. Like I work closely with artists. Like I did all of Sam's project. I produced most of PinkCaravan's music. Like I don't really do like the one-offs all that often, or at least I haven't. So I think as far as like KC goes, it just means like I would have to be like closer to more of the artists there. I have an unreleased song with AL. I think it's gonna make his EP. That's what he said. But you know how that goes. So and this is very interesting because when I made the beat at Unlabeled with the Goonies, and basically I kind of had a vibe that I was going for, and then when he started making the song, he was like on a totally different vibe. So I definitely learned a lot about his artistry in that session. But yeah, like so I think we have a song coming out, and we had like a lot of the stuff I have with KC artists is like overdue. Like me working with Solomon is like super, super overdue.
Yeah.
But I send him beats all the time. So well, we have songs together, they're just not out, I guess. So yeah, it's just more so about me just being more connected to like artists so I can like understand the vision and the vibe and stuff like that. Cause I don't really I'm not the type of producer that just kind of like makes beats that anybody can like work with. I think that's kind of a hindrance of mine, I guess, or whatever. Like I'm just like, if you just hear a beat, like it's one artist will probably like it more than another. It's not like anyone can use it, I guess. So I just kind of I feel like I always have to like tailor make things for people all the time. So if I want a song with a KC artist, I have to make a song with that artist in mind, you know, and then after so many reps of that, you're gonna get the one that actually works, you know.
Yeah.
So I think over time I'll work with more KC artists. I've been in sessions with a few, but we don't have anything that's like out yet. So you know,
You were
we'll see.
you were excited to talk Kansas City music. Are there any like specific like important memories you have of like Kansas City music or anything that came to mind when that came up?
Uh, I just mean just about like you know, oh god, just like the artistry, the artistry like in general, or just like the artists coming up in general.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when I was in college, I was super removed from KC. Didn't even know KC had a local scene like at all. I was super big into St. Louis's scene at the time. So like Smino was coming up, and I was very like involved with, not with him specifically, but just like kind of like the artists that were brewing up because Smino was becoming a thing. So like kind of like all the artists that he inspired and stuff like that. And so that's kind of like where I developed more as a producer. And so in KC, like they had this thing called like St. Louis art scene that was like really big a few years ago. And in KC, they didn't have something like that now at the time. Now they have like more of an art scene. Like people are kind of like going out and like, you know, they have the different events like the open mics and the soul sessions and the I don't want to name drop anything specific, but you know what I'm saying. So like there's more so in the first Fridays and stuff like that. So I think like the city, like that's the thing with like I think artists, like you have to have a culture. I'm sorry, I keep dropping my phone, but you have to have like a culture of fans or like an audience that wants to support it, you know? And I think KC as a city are like slowly coming around to like the artsier type of stuff. And then that'll eventually trickle down to like artists like making better music or fans like being more receptive of artists like in the city and stuff like that. At least that's how I feel. So but yeah, as far as like working with KC artists, like definitely a goal of mine. But I want to like I'm super particular. Like I wanted it to I don't just want to make a song to say like, oh, I have a song with KC. I want it to be like a really good song, you know, like anything else that I would do, you know.
Oh yeah, I think you've been plenty successful so far with like your kind of craft, like tailor-made approach to producing for people. So I can only see that continuing to work when you continue to kind of branch out to Kansas City acts.
I hope so, man. Doing the best I can. You feel me? Like it's no secret to this. You just gotta put the work in, and you know, hopefully you'll catch a vibe.
For sure. Yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or like any plugs you have where people can find you and listen to you and everything?
Follow me on social media at its namesake, and I will be really just follow me on social media because I don't want to. I'm the type of person I will spoil something and then it won't happen or like it'll come way later. So I won't say anything, but just know like working on tons of music, working on if any artists are watching this, working on like more beats to just be readily available, stuff like that. And working on like mixing and engineering and stuff too. So that's like a new craft that I picked up from like being quarantined and stuff like that. That's super, super exciting actually. But yeah, just follow me on social media. Shout out Aaron, you know, for the interview.
Oh, of course. No, and I saw
pod.
No, yeah. And I saw on I think like I was on your SoundCloud, but then it linked to your actual website. But you have a link on there that's like a playlist of all of the stuff you've produced so far that's on Spotify. So if anyone is listening and is interested to see what your stuff sounds like, I think that's probably a good place to find it all. So
that's true. I haven't even touched my SoundCloud page in like months. So I'm glad that my
gotta go do some
website was
reposts
like
on there.
yeah. I'm glad that my SoundCloud or my website was like super like you know, it had all the information that needed to be there. But yeah, the Spotify playlist, I'm hoping that like, I really want to expand that, you know, get some more quality songs that I can put in that playlist. Sometimes I make songs I don't want to add. So you know, that just happens. But you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, and people can follow at Shuttlecock Mag on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The website is shuttlecockmusic.com. The web store is shuttlecockmag.bigcartel.com. We have a few of the Spine t-shirts left. We have the brand new Shuttlecock Year 4 photozine that came out just this week. That's 40 of my favorite concert photos from the last couple years. And yeah, subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast or our YouTube channel. And
The
yeah, thank
premier Kansas City music outlet, Shuttlecock
your
magazine.
words, not mine. But yeah, thank you
Thanks.
for being on the show today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man. Because I don't do like I don't think I've ever done. Well, I guess I have done an interview before, but it's super rare. So I like talking music. So appreciate you
Yeah,
having me on.
I love the rare shit. That's but yeah, I'm gonna hit the stop recording button now.